my whole lifetime, I've never had a different president. It's been 37 years that Robert Mugabe has been president. And he's basically taken the country down to as low as you can go. So there's no way to go except up for the next regime. And for the first time, Zimbabweans can hope for something different. So even if it's not the whole turnaround that we've been waiting for, it's at least something different. And the quintessential Zimbabwean emotion is hope. So we hope that this new government is going to give us something radically different. Zimbabweans' dignity has been stripped to its bare core. People are always only thinking about basic commodities, just the bare necessities, getting by from day to day. People can't even access their own money. You work hard the whole month and you can't access your own money from the bank. So indeed, Zimbabweans are really beset by problems that really should not exist in the 21st century. But at the same time, despite all this lack of bare necessities, Zimbabweans are still striving to do better for themselves. Young people are still enterprising, and I think it's a sign of just how hardworking and how resilient Zimbabweans are, that despite how bad things got, the country kept running, and people got up every day and did something for themselves, for their families, and for their country. I think Zimbabweans right now are not under the illusion that they've achieved the justice that they've been looking for. People will talk about the Gukurahundi in the 1980s, which the current president was allegedly heavily involved in. People will talk about the violence of the 2000 land reform, which the current president says he's going to pay reparations for. People talk about the violence in 2008 in the elections, after the elections, and a lot of people were beaten up, upwards of 200 people disappeared. So while in his inauguration speech, he talked about reconciliation and letting bygones be bygones, I don't think everyone is buying that message, because there cannot be no reconciliation without truth. There cannot be no fresh start without actually sealing the wounds of the past. And that's yet to happen in Zimbabwe. I think Zimbabwe is a sick patient who's refusing a diagnosis. The idea of justice in Zimbabwe starts with acknowledging the wrongs of the past. It starts with having an open conversation about the things that have happened in our country. It starts with acknowledging that the Gukurahundi happened. Yes, there were people killed. Yes, there were mass graves. When there are young people, there are people my age who do not know their parents because they were killed during this episode in my country's history. But we can't talk about it, even up until now. I think a lot of artists and communicators will try now in this new regime to see if the space is now open to have that conversation. But I'd be hard put to believe that Emmerson Mnangagwa is going to allow just an open conversation about Gukurahundi, especially considering that he's supposedly one of the main architects. Acknowledging what happened will lead us to ask the question, how did it happen? Why did it happen? Who did it? As it is right now, people acknowledge that something happened. It was a moment of madness, as Robert Mugabe puts it. But who went mad? Who is the madman who should be shackled down for allowing that moment of madness to happen? And accountability is going to be about identifying those people who are responsible for making this happen, bringing them to justice, bringing them to book for these things that happened that have not yet been acknowledged, and making sure that victims, the people of Matabeleland and the Midlands, the people of Zimbabwe should be able to say, this happened, these were the perpetrators, and this is the price that they paid. But we haven't seen that happen, and I think it's going to be still a luta continua until that type of accountability comes about. There's a feeling of injustice. There's a feeling of lack of fairness, lack of impartiality, because some of the people that helped Robert Mugabe are now imprisoned. But Robert Mugabe himself gets to keep all his wealth. He gets to keep all the benefits that come with being a former president. He gets to keep his salary. If you acknowledge that he has brought this country to such a situation that was so bad that the army had to intervene, how does he get away with all of this? How does he get away with being the man who has been at the helm for 37 years, in a country that had a genocide, that had absolutely no property rights at some point, and where an entire generation's aspirations have been wiped out. How does he get to enjoy his sunset years without having to pay for it? We're glad that he gets to see a Zimbabwe without him as president, but I would really like to see the next step. He has to pay for some of these things that has put my generation and the people before us through.